The first bullet shattered against the rock beside my face. Stone exploded into powder, spraying across my lips. Bitter, metallic, tasting like pulverized mountain. The smell hit next, sharp and burnt cordite mixing with cold air that bit straight through gloves and skin. My breath ghosted wide in front of my scope, thin and fast. Another crack. Closer. We were pinned. 3 snipers pressed into fractured stone, rifles up. Nowhere left to move. The mountain wind cut through us, carrying dust, echo, and the distant rhythm of boots closing in from both ridges. Slow, certain, unstoppable. No one spoke at first. Ruiz shifted beside me, limbs suddenly heavy. That strange moment when adrenaline spikes, then begins to drain, leaving weight behind. Still, he kept his rifle steady. Then he whispered, voice tight but calm, "We're not getting out of this." The words settled like frost. Below us, the valley was silent. No extraction, no radio, no second chance. Just the cold, the wind, and the waiting. 200 yards behind our shattered line, hidden deep in broken shell, one world was completely different. Quiet, submerged, rhythmic. Petty Officer Lena Viper Cross lay motionless, cheek against the rifle stock, breathing slow enough to disappear. Through her optic, the ridge shimmered in a wavering mirage, heat distortion bending shapes and distance. She did not fight the chaos, she rid through it. Crosswind brushed the back of her neck, left to right, but at the target, the wind ran different along the ridge face. She held 2 mils into the invisible push, calculating the arc her bullet would have to climb before falling perfectly into place. Cold bore. First shot must be flawless, no correction, no second chance. Above us, an enemy leader stepped forward, arm rising to signal the final push. Time narrowed. Lena exhaled and began the shot. We had inserted before dawn when the mountain still held the night's cold like a living thing. The air cut through fabric and skin, sharp enough to sting the lungs with every breath. Frost clung to stone. Even the metal of the rifle felt hostile against bare fingers. Up here, the mountain did not forgive mistakes, it erased them. Our objective was simple. Observe the weapons corridor running through the valley, track movement, report patterns, and disappear. No noise, no signature. No fight unless survival demanded it. Chief Marcus Hale moved first, steady and deliberate, every step chosen, never wasted. Knox followed with quiet urgency, already reading distance, angles, and escape geometry, as if the terrain were a living map. Ruiz carried the long rifle with calm confidence, the kind built from years of impossible shots and steady nerves. And behind us, always unseen unless you knew where to look, moved Lena Viper Cross. Lena never wasted motion, never rushed, never reacted outwardly. The first time I watched her fire, there was no drama, no build-up, just one breath, one trigger, break, and a steel plate 2,000 yards away rang once and stopped moving forever. Hale had said only one thing afterward, voice flat but certain, "If this mission collapses, Lena is our insurance." No one questioned it. We reached the ridge before first light and settled into overwatch positions, rifles anchored into fractured stone. The valley below slowly revealed itself as dawn bled across the horizon. Narrow trail, broken rock shelves, wind channels twisting unpredictably across distance. Perfect ground for long-range control, but deadly if exposed. Hours passed in stillness. The cold sank deeper, turning fingers stiff, breath slow, muscles tight from immobility. Through my optic, heat shimmer mirage began to rise from the valley floor as the sun touched stone, bending shapes and distance into subtle waves. Even without movement, the battlefield was alive. Then Knox spoke, voice low but sharp. Movement. North Ridge. Earlier than expected. Through the scope I saw them. Armed figure, moving in disciplined spacing, not wandering, not random. Searching, purposeful. Hale did not react outwardly. Hold. No movement. We remain invisible. The wind shifted across the ridge, carrying a faint scraping sound, fabric brushing stone. Somewhere along our hide, a loose strip of camo lifted for half a second and flashed against sunlight. Half a second was enough. One of the enemy fighters stopped, turned, looked directly toward our ridge, rifle raised. The first shot cracked across the mountain. Stone erupted inches from Ruiz, dust filling the air with the taste of grit and metal. Instinct replaced stillness. We shifted into defensive positions, returning controlled fire, careful, precise, trying to stay hidden even as the fight found us. More figures appeared along the ridge line, too many, spreading fast, communicating, adjusting, not a patrol, not chance. We had been discovered. Comms crackled with static. Nox adjusted frequency, nothing. No signal reaching command, no extraction possible. The mission had changed. Observation was over. Survival had begun, and somewhere behind our exposed ridge, unseen in deeper shell where the enemy's eyes had not yet reached, Lena had already begun to move. The first exchange burned fast and violent, then stretched into something slower and more dangerous. Once the enemy knew our position, the ridge stopped being cover and became a narrowing funnel. Every movement had weight. Every second mattered. Shift right. Stay low, Hale ordered, voice steady, cutting clean through the noise. We slid across fractured stone, elbows grinding into grit, rifles braced, firing only when necessary. The cold bit through gloves, but sweat still gathered beneath layers, turning the air inside our gear damp and heavy. My breath misted faintly in front of the optic, then vanished in the dust kicked up by incoming rounds. Cracks snapped across the ridge from multiple directions now. Not random fire, but controlled pressure. They were coordinating. Ruiz fired once, adjusted, fired again, then his breath hitched. A round tore across his shoulder, spinning him slightly before he caught himself against the rock. Blood darkened his sleeve almost instantly. He didn't fall back. "I'm good," he muttered, though his arm trembled for half a second before locking steady again. The adrenaline had surged, sharp, electric, but already the heaviness was creeping in, turning his limbs lead-weighted. Slower than he wanted, harder to ignore. Knox kept scanning through his scope, voice low, fast, analytical. "They're splitting. Two groups, left ridge moving wide, high crest pushing forward. They're shaping an encirclement." Encirclement. The words settled cold. Hale didn't react outwardly, but I saw the shift. Calculation replacing reaction. He understood the geometry of the trap forming around us. Once both ridges locked, angles would collapse, and we would have nowhere left to move. "Fall back to the lower shelf," Hale ordered. We slid downward over broken rock into a narrow formation, barely wide enough to hold three bodies. It gave partial overhead cover, but boxed us into a fixed position, defensible but final. Stone scraped under our weight. Dust filled the air, bitter on the tongue, sharp in the lungs. Rounds struck the ridge above, splintering fragments that rained down in small, stinging impacts. Sparks flashed against stone. 1 more meter forward, and they would have a clean downward line into us. Comms crackled again, then died completely. Knox tried once more. Nothing. Static swallowed the channel. We were alone now. Above us, silhouettes moved along the crest, rifles angled downward, pacing their advance with slow certainty. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. Time favored them. Ruiz wiped blood from his glove and reset his grip, breathing tight, steadying against the weight creeping through his arm. Knox kept tracking distances, counting angles under his breath, searching for an opening that didn't exist. Hale watched the ridgeline without blinking, already measuring the last defensive line. Behind us, far beyond the noise and dust, Lena lay pressed into cold stone, body perfectly still. Through her scope, the chaos above resolved into structure, spacing, Command positions, timing rhythm. Heat shimmer, mirage, distorted the crest, bending shapes in wave, but she read through it, ignoring illusion, trusting calculation, two ridges tightening. Leader's guiding movement, final push approaching. The trap was closing. The mountain seemed to tighten around us, the cold biting deeper as if the air itself had turned against our lungs. Dust hung thick, mixing with the sharp scent of burnt cordite, every breath tasting like grit and metal. Above, the two enemy elements moved with patient precision, spreading across the ridgelines in a slow, deliberate squeeze. No rush, no noise wasted, just pressure. Count, Hale said quietly. Knox kept his eye in the optic, voice steady but tense. Left ridge, 6. High crest, 5 confirmed, maybe more behind rock. Leaders pushing forward. Coordinating, too many, too close. Ruiz shifted beside me, jaw clenched against pain, blood stiffening his sleeve in the freezing air. His arm moved slower now, heavier, but his rifle never dipped. The adrenaline that had burned hot was fading, leaving weight in his limbs like stone. Still, he steadied himself, refusing weakness. Rounds snapped overhead, striking rock and sending shards, skittering across our cover. 1 more meter forward and the ridge above would own us completely. Ammo? Hale asked. Low, Knox answered. Very low, Reese added. No radio, no extraction, no fallback. The wind swept suddenly across the ridge, cold and uneven, brushing the back of my neck and carrying faint sounds from above. Boots shifting, stone sliding, rifles adjusting. The mountain had gone quiet again, that strange, suspended silence before something irreversible. Hale adjusted his position, scanning the crest, calculating the final defensive line. His voice remained calm, but the weight beneath it was unmistakable. If they breach this shelf, we hold here. No retreat beyond this point. No one questioned him. There was nowhere left to retreat to. Knox tracked movement again, leaders stepping forward, preparing final descent. That was when the realization settled fully, not panic, not fear, but the cold certainty that the ridge had already decided our fate. Behind us, hidden where the battle's noise faded into distance, Lena lay motionless against frozen stone, breath slow, heart steady. Through her optic, the battlefield resolved into clean geometry, command nodes, spacing intervals, wind vectors bending invisible lines through open air. Mirage shimmered across the crest, distorting shapes. But she read beyond it, mapping reality beneath illusion. She was not watching the fight. She was solving it. Above our position, the first enemy leader stepped forward, arm rising to signal the final push. The encirclement was complete. The gunfire thinned into scattered cracks, not because the danger had passed, but because the enemy no longer needed speed. The trap was sealed. The mountain air cut colder now, biting through fabric and skin, each breath sharp and thin in the lungs. Dust and burnt cordite hung low, mixing with the faint metallic taste of stone. Time felt heavy, slow, pressing. Ruiz shifted against the rock, breath tight, his wounded shoulder stiffening in the cold. The surge of adrenaline that had carried him through the first exchange was fading, leaving his arm lead heavy, harder to lift, harder to ignore. Still, his rifle remained steady. He would not let it fall. Knox stayed behind the optic, counting quietly, voice low and controlled, distance closing. Seconds now. Hale watched the crest without blinking, posture calm, but the decision forming behind his eyes was unmistakable. The last stand every leader hopes never to make. He checked his rifle once more, slow, deliberate, then spoke. If they breach, we hold. No panic, no wasted rounds. Silence followed, not empty, heavy, final. Ruiz exhaled slowly, voice rough but steady. We're not getting out of this, are we? Hale didn't answer right away. The wind scraped across the ridge, carrying faint shifting sounds from above. Boots, stone breath, Then he said quietly, "We stay soldiers." The word settled like frost. Above us, shadows moved along the crest, the final descent beginning. Far behind our shattered position, Lena Vipercross lay perfectly still, cheek pressed to the cold stock of her rifle. Her world was different, quiet, submerged, rhythmic, untouched by panic. Through the optic, mirage shimmer bent the Ridgela into waves, but she read through distortion, mapping reality beneath illusion. Wind brushed the back of her neck from left to right, but along the ridge face it shifted differently. She compensated instinctively, holding into invisible drift, calculating the arc her bullet would climb before falling true. 4 targets, 4 leaders holding the assault together, cold bore pressure, no correction, no second chance. Her breathing slowed even further, heart steady, mind clear. She began the count. 14 seconds. Time narrowed to the thin circle of glass in front of Lena's eye. Outside it, the mountain was noise and motion. Inside it, everything slowed to rhythm. Breath in, breath out. The world submerged, quiet as if underwater. The first leader stepped along the crest, arm lifting to drive the final push. Mirage shimmer wavered across him, bending edges, stretching distance. Lena didn't chase the illusion, she read through it. Crosswind brushed the back of her neck left to right, but on the ridge the flow ran uneven along stone. She held 2 mills into the invisible drift, feeling the arc the round would climb before gravity pulled it home. Cold bore, no correction, no second chance. Her fingers settled. Pressure smooth. Breath released, the rifle cracked. Through the scope, the leader folded mid-signal, motion cut clean before it could spread. For half a heartbeat, nothing changed, then confusion rippled across the crest. Lena had already moved. Second target, the spotter shifting, searching for a source he couldn't see. Mirage danced, wind whispered, elevation confirmed, hold steady. Second shot. The spotter dropped, rifle sliding from his grip, the ridge losing its eyes. Below, the assault faltered, not stopped but no longer synchronized. Lena shifted again. Third target, a fighter closest to breaking our shelf, weight forward, rifle ready. Crosshair settled, breath slow, trigger building. Third shot. The figure crumpled, momentum gone, the descent stalling for a crucial second. 1 remained, the final anchor of the attack. He stepped forward, scanning, trying to understand why his line had gone silent. Lena slowed her breathing even further, heart steady, vision locked. The wind flickered. She adjusted instinctively, trusting discipline over doubt, holding into the drift, tracing the round's arc in her mind. 4th shot. The last leader fell, and in that instant the mountain changed. For a single stretched heartbeat, the ridge went silent. Not safe, not calm, just broken. The steady rhythm of the assault, footsteps, signals, movement, vanished as if someone had cut the cord holding it together. Dust drifted across the crest where figures had stood seconds ago, but no new commands followed, no final push, no synchronized descent. Below, pressed into fractured stone, we felt it before we understood it. The crushing weight above us had lifted. Knox raised his head slightly, eye still in the optic, scanning fast. Movement. Scattered. They're not advancing. His voice carried disbelief, like he was watching something impossible unfold. Ruiz tightened his grip on the rifle, ignoring the burning weight in his shoulder, bracing for the breach that never came. Hale remained perfectly still, eyes fixed on the ridgeline, waiting, verifying, refusing to trust hope too early. Above us, enemy fighters shifted without direction, searching, calling out across the ridge. Their advance, precise and deadly moments ago, had dissolved into hesitation. No leader, no timing, no command. Then Hale saw it. 4 shapes along the crest, motionless. Understanding arrived without words. He exhaled once, steady but heavy. Overwatch. He murmured. Knox followed his gaze, then gave a slow nod. She did it. 14 seconds. 4 shots. The impossible had already happened. Hale rose just enough to scan the descent path below the ridge, mind shifting instantly from defense to survival. They've lost coordination. This is our window. We move now. Ruiz pushed himself upright, jaw clenched, refusing help. Knox slung his rifle, eyes still sweeping the ridge. Enemy movement remained, scattered, uncertain, no longer closing. Far behind us, beyond the dust and noise, Lena Vipercross stayed prone, rifle steady, tracking every remaining threat. She did not rush. She did not breathe faster. She simply watched, ensuring the corridor she had carved through precision and silence stayed open. Hale gave the order. Move. We moved fast, low, and silent, slipping from the fractured shelf into the narrow descent Lena had carved open. Minutes ago, this path had been death. Now it was the only line between survival and the valley below. Cold air cut through sweat-soaked layers, burning the lungs with every breath. Loose gravel shifted under our boots, small stones sliding into darkness with hollow clicks that sounded louder than they were. Knox led, rifle sweeping, eyes sharp, tracking scattered movement along the ridge. The enemy was still there, still armed, but broken, uncertain, no longer moving with purpose. Ruiz followed close behind, his injured arm heavy, every step forcing strength from a body already drained. The earlier surge of adrenaline was gone, leaving weight in his limbs, but he never slowed. Hale covered our rear, calm and steady, watching the ridge for any sign of regrouping. Halfway down, a shadow appeared above, raising a rifle toward our line. Before any of us could react, a suppressed crack whispered from behind. The figure dropped instantly. Lena, still watching, still protecting. We kept moving, sliding across fractured stone, breath sharp, hearts pounding, the valley floor rising closer with every step. Gunfire faded into distant echoes behind us. Knox checked the ridge again. No organized pursuit, he confirmed, voice low, almost disbelieving. At the base of the slope, Hale signaled a brief halt. Ruiz leaned against cold rock, breathing hard but alive. No one spoke. Survival had not fully settled yet. It felt unreal, fragile, temporary. Hale looked back toward the ridge, far above, against fading light. A lone silhouette stood, motionless, rifle lowered, calm in the cold wind. Lena Vipercross, no victory, no gesture, just quiet certainty. She had never moved for recognition, only for the mission, only for the team. Hale gave a single nod, unseen at that distance, but meant all the same. Then we turned and kept moving alive. Night closed over the valley like a curtain, swallowing the last echoes of gunfire and leaving only the steady thrum of the approaching helicopter. By the time we reached the extraction point, the cold had crept deep into muscle and bone, the kind that lingers after danger fades. Our breath still came heavy, misting into the dark, but we were alive, and that fact felt almost unreal. The helicopter settled without lights, rotors slicing the silence in slow, powerful rhythm. No cheers, no words, just movement. Ruiz climbed first, stubborn and silent, despite the weight dragging at his injured arm. Knox followed, eyes still scanning out of habit, as if the ridge might rise again behind us. Hale stepped aboard last, steady, composed, but the strain of the fight sat quietly in his posture. Inside, the noise of the blades filled everything, yet the cabin felt strangely silent. No one spoke. No one needed to. Each of us knew how close the mountain had come to closing over our names forever. Across from us sat Lena, rifle resting across her knees, gloves still dusted with stone, face calm, unreadable, as if the 14 seconds that had changed everything were nothing more than another calculated moment. There was no pride in her eyes, no need for recognition. She had seen the pattern, solved the problem, and acted nothing more, nothing less. Later in the dim debrief room, the footage played in slow motion, 4 precise moments, 4 impacts, 14 seconds that fractured an entire assault. Words like precision, discipline, and decisive action were written into the report. The mission was marked classified. No headlines, no ceremony, no medals placed under bright lights. When the room emptied, Hale paused beside her. "You brought us home," he said quietly. Lena only nodded once. Some victories are never recorded. Some names are never spoken beyond the few who lived because of them. True strength does not seek to be seen. It acts, calm, silent, and certain when the moment arrives. If you want to hear more true stories of courage and sacrifice, subscribe to Lady Veteran Stories and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.